Most people use the word spirituality to describe a direct personal experience of the sacred. It's different from religion in that spirituality doesn't depend on books, buildings, traditions, or guides. All those things can be helpful in a spiritual quest, but they're not necessary. Spirituality is an individual experience of something so much greater than ourselves that it's a mystery. Some call that mystery God, some call it nature, some call it love. Others prefer to leave it nameless. And the Jewish tradition, out of respect for that mystery and in deep submission to the Ten Commandments, using the name of God is forbidden in writing or even speaking. According to Islam, on the other hand, there are 99 names or attributes of God, signifying the complexity and ultimate unknowability of the sacred. I bring all this up to say that the cause of our experience of spirituality is ultimately indescribable. But for tens of thousands of years, we've given it our best shot. In song and in petroglyphs, in prayer, in writing, in art, in dance, we've attempted to describe the indescribable. Today, I too will make a brief attempt at the impossible. I want to explore three trajectories of the spirituality that many of us experience. Each of the three is different and unique, but all three contribute mightily to our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And for many of us, they weave together to construct a personal faith. Now, these three basic understandings of the sacred are the transcendent, divine love, and the emptiness that we can experience in meditation. You've probably heard of transcendentalism as literature. We know the names of Walt Whitman and Margaret Fuller, Emily Dickinson, Henry David Thoreau, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Even if you haven't read them, you're familiar with some of those names. They were a group of friends who were intellectual powerhouses, and they were writing in the early 1800s, just as a distinctly American culture was beginning to gel. This was also the time when Unitarianism was really differentiating itself from mainline Christianity. Transcendentalists believe in the profound richness of the world, both in the beauty and the ugly stuff. They believe that reaching out to personally experience that richness was the key to our connection with the universe. The only way to experience the sacred was to reach out and experience the world for yourself. It's up to you. You have to reach out. You have to open yourself to the bounty of spirit and beauty that surrounds you. There are a couple of short passages from Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Nature, that to me sum up this idea of reaching out. In this first passage, he talks about opening ourselves with a sense of wonder like a child. Emerson writes, "To speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eyes of the man, but shines into the eye and the heart of the child. The lover of nature is he whose inward and outward sense are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of adulthood." This passage reminds me of how much easier it was as a child to wonder at the world. A sense of wonder may be our greatest asset in this spiritual journey. The second passage from Emerson combines that sense of wonder with a sense of losing oneself in the midst of the world. He writes, "In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel nothing can befall me in life. My head bathed in the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all the currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part and particle of God. These concepts of wonder and deep connection to the universe are repeated in writings of mystics from around the world and throughout time. There are 1,000 things I could say about this stream of spirituality, but I probably don't need to. The sense of awe and connection is probably something that you have experienced yourself. In nature, at the birth of a child, in loving community, or simply gazing at a perfectly fragile flower blossom. It's so simple. And it's one of the major themes within spirituality that's a key component of our faith tradition. Now, the second vein of spirituality that weaves through our tradition and many of our own experiences have reflected is divine love. That's the best name I could come up for it this week. It's a sense that something bigger than us cares deeply, and that at the end of the day, love wins. Historically, it shows up in the form of universalism for us. Most of us know the name George de Benneville as the namesake for our summer camp up near Big Bear that just recently barely escaped the fires this year. He wasn't the founder of the camp, though. George de Benneville was the first person to preach universalism in America in the mid-1700s. He came to America because his faith, our faith, was too radical for Europe in those days. He was run out of Germany, run out of Holland, run out of France for his beliefs. So in 1741, he headed for America, where religious radicals were finding a safer space to live their truth. His universalist faith wasn't something that he read or was taught. It came to him through a personal experience. Because of the prevailing vision of a really angry and really punishing God in those days, in his youth, de Benneville was tortured by visions of himself burning in hell. Even as a child, he was convinced that his sins were just too many and too bad to be forgiven. But one day, a very different vision came to him. It was a vision of Jesus interceding to save him. De Benneville simply knew that he was saved, and his vision convinced him that others must be as well. He figured, if an imperfect sinner like himself would be saved, then surely everyone else must be forgiven too. In his personal spirituality, George de Benneville found a message of hope and a divine love available to all people. He found a universal love. Now, another way that love enters our UU tradition is through our commitments to justice. Before he was a force for justice, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an academic theologian. The main direction of his research and writing was about personalism. Personalism places the personality at the center of all existence, both the personality of God and the personality of individual people. He thought personality was central. It's that mental, emotional, relational piece of us that's the thing that really matters. It's also an essential piece of our relationship with God, as he figured only personalities can care about each other. Only personalities can know and love each other. Now, this conscious thinking, feeling, decision-making God is somewhat at odds with what a lot of Unitarian Universalists believe today. I understand that, but it gives rise to one of our core principles. King said, There must be a recognition of the sacredness of human personality. Deeply rooted in our political and religious heritage is the conviction that every person is an heir to a legacy of dignity and worth. That should sound pretty familiar to you. This sacredness of personality is the foundation upon which King lived his life. His belief was simple, just very hard to live by. He was a fundamentalist for love. God's love and our response aim to deliver us from the selfishness and short-sightedness that lingers in every one of our hearts, regardless of the color of our skin or our political party. Though our particular theology varies, many of us have experienced this sense of love in our spirituality. It comes as a deep feeling that something much bigger than ourselves knows and cares for our well-being. And it comes in the truth of nonviolence. It's a challenging proposition. The only path that truly moves us forward is a path of love. It's challenging, yet somewhere deep down we know it's true. The third and the last major vein of spirituality that I want to talk about today is perhaps the most difficult to describe. It's calm. It's a sense of emptiness without judgment. Hopefully, we experience a little bit of that in our meditation. We spend so much of our lives waiting to be born, waiting to die, waiting to grow up, waiting to grow old, waiting for expectations to be fulfilled and hopes to come true. Our busy brains get so fully occupied, waiting for the future or regretting the past, that we miss the opportunities in front of us. Instead of letting our brain run in 1,000 different directions, we can use the time we have as an opportunity to create space in our minds and our hearts. Buddhists have been talking about this quieting of the mind for a very, very long time. More recently, in the West, we talk about mindfulness. You might think of it as slowing your mind down enough to let the muddy waters clear. If our minds are still enough, long enough, all that sediment, the dirt and debris, all the 1,000 different unwelcome thoughts that cloud our days can settle out. A popular expression of mindfulness practitioners is, don't just do something, sit there. Don't just do something, sit there. This twisting of the common life reaction recognizes that sometimes the most productive thing we can do is to stop, to be still, and to take a breath. This has been a fraught year. On the precipice of election, our minds are filled with hopes and fears and 1,000 distractions. It's an exceptionally difficult time. Letting go of those anxieties, letting the silt and the mud settle to the bottom, letting the clouds pass to clear the sky of our mind can be a true blessing these days. Some, hopefully many of you, have had the opportunity to explore this kind of spirituality. I know for me personally, it has been a lifesaver. So transcendentalism. Divine love and emptiness are the best ways that I could describe the indescribable today. But spirituality is a personal thing. No one can experience for you. No one can describe exactly what you have seen, felt, heard, and known in your encounters with the sacred. Our spiritual lives are one of the most personal things that we can share with another person. I hope that every once in a while you have the opportunity to share with these good people in this community. Amen.